More than 120 countries and regions may now be counted among China's most important commercial partners. These include the nations of the Arab world as well as the United States, Brazil, Japan, and India. To promote its commercial activities, China frequently acquires ports from other countries or builds new ones. China has said that it intends to make an investment of $7.2 billion. In conjunction with Malaysia, the objective of this project is to build what will be known as Huangjing Port, which will be the largest port in the world. Despite this, both Singapore and the United States are anxious about the port idea. What kind of an impact would the development of this superport have on China and Malaysia? In what ways will it affect both the United States and Singapore? Before we go on, subscribe to Cha News to watch about all the shocking world projects. You won't regret it. So, let's begin. As a result of the expansion of international trade, the strait has become the most important commercial corridor between countries. The Malacca Strait is the body of water that separates the island of Sumatra from the Malay Peninsula. It is now considered to be one of the most important core straits in the world and links the Pacific Ocean to the Indian Ocean. The region's annual economic output is greater than tens of billions of dollars, and freighters go through this area on a regular basis. The Strait of Malacca is currently not only one of the most important routes for world trade, but it is also a maritime lifeline for countries such as Japan, China, and South Korea, in addition to other nations that have large import and export volumes. Since China is now the nation with the highest rate of growth in terms of its trade industry, it is only logical to place the utmost attention on the port area at issue. In terms of the construction of the Maritime Silk Road, Malaysia is an essential node not only in the ASEAN region, but also in China's Belt and Road Plan as a whole. Both China's and Malaysia's economies, as well as their trading activities, would stand to gain a great deal by working together on the development of a new port. Even in the distant future, it may be able to assume the substantial role currently played by Singapore's present port. China and Malaysia have been working together for a considerable amount of time. Both countries will work together to complete the Huangjing Port project, which will result in the construction of a deep-water supply port. It has been brought to my attention that the Huangjing Port in Malaysia encompasses a total land area of 1,366 acres, consisting of 3 constructed islands and 1 natural island. The total investment for the project was $14.5 billion, with China contributing $7.2 billion US dollars to the total. According to the plans that have been drawn up by the two countries, Huangjing Port will be completely constructed in the year 2025, and the deep-water port finished in the year 2019. By the year 2025, the size of Huangjing Port will have surpassed that of all other ports in the Strait of Malacca. In the not-too-distant future, Huangjing Port will have a throughput that is measured in the hundreds of millions of tons. It is generally accepted that the deep-water supply terminal known as Huangjing Port has a throughput that is lower than the total throughput of all American ports combined. However, it is quite rare for China to terminate its collaboration with Malaysia in the middle of such a big port construction project, even if it has not yet been completed. Then, what exactly took place is the question. In point of fact, the Huangjing Port project, which was a joint venture between China and Malaysia, was abruptly scrapped due to a combination of 2 different circumstances. When Mahathir, who was 97 years old at the time, became Prime Minister of Malaysia, he unexpectedly canceled 4 Chinese investment-related projects that had a combined value of more than $22 billion. As a result, China suffered substantial financial losses. After these 4 projects were found to be in violation of the conditions of the agreement, Malaysia's response to China was to assert that the cost of the project was unreasonable. The collaboration was terminated as a last-ditch effort to salvage the situation. The idea to construct the Huangjing Port in Malaysia infuriates China even more. For up to 8 months, Malaysia has been in debt to China for a range of construction-related charges totaling up to 20 million ringgit. This debt has accumulated during the course of Malaysia's debt. There was also a sizable number of Chinese workers who were fired without being paid their severance packages. As an act of revenge, China has made it official that they would not be proceeding with the construction of the Huangjing Port in Malaysia. According to the terms of the project agreement, Malaysia is obligated to make a sizable payment to China in the amount of 400 million US dollars as liquidated damage. However, they broke their commitment and refused to reimburse China for any losses that were incurred as a result of liquidation. Both China and Malaysia endured enormous financial setbacks as a direct result of the rupture in their partnership about the Huangjing Port. The Huangjing Port project, on the other hand, will reach a significant crossroads in the year 2022. So, what exactly is going on at this location? In recent years, Malaysia has been subjected to consequences that are ongoing as a result of numerous variables. As a result, Malaysia's economy, which is the third largest in ASEAN, has lost its growth momentum. Malaysia is aware of the significance of China and Huangjing Port and plans to begin cooperation projects with China in order to support the growth of the local economy. This is one of the strategies that Malaysia is employing. The Huangjing Port project has been picked back up again after being placed on hold for over a year's worth of time. As a result of Malaysia and China reaching a settlement agreement, China was able to go forward with the building of the Huangjing Port project, which is scheduled to be completed by the end of the year 2026. But the impact of this revelation on Singapore will be catastrophic. Even Singapore made an effort to get back together with the United States of America, which was a contributing factor in the collapse of the Huangjing Port project. So the question is, why is Singapore behaving in this manner? What kind of effects will Singapore feel as a result? It cannot be overstated how important the port of Singapore is to the economy of Singapore. Because of Singapore's advantageous location in the Asia-Pacific region, the country's port has the potential to become the second largest cargo port in the world in the next decades. Despite the fact that Huangjing Port does not have the same geographical advantages as Singapore Port. If everything goes according to plan, however, the Huangjing Port will be transformed into a massive artificial port created by land reclamation. The construction size of the Huangjing Port will also be successful in capturing at least a quarter of the trade share of the Singapore Port. This is due to the larger size of the Huangjing Port. In addition, China, the nation that was responsible for the creation of the deep water terminal at the Huangjing Port in Malaysia, would dock its international trade ships at the Huangjing Port in Malaysia. In this scenario, China's commercial policy will not be beneficial to Singapore in any way. They won't be able to threaten China, and the United States won't be able to either. As a result, China's economic growth will be improved. In point of fact, the United States has long been Singapore's big tree. Because of this support, Singapore is in a position to regularly impose strong control over the Strait of Malacca. This port is essential to Singapore's capacity to handle the expansion of marine trade, which has a considerable influence not just on China, but also on other Asian countries. When the deep water supply terminal is finished being built, China and other countries will concentrate the majority of their trade at the Huangjing Port. If this comes to be, Singapore's revenue would take a big hit, and the United States' interests will continue to deteriorate. Because of this, Singapore and the United States are both under a significant amount of stress. As a result of the fact that China has one of the most successful trading histories in the whole world, there should be various opportunities for partnership. In addition to the Huangjing Port, which is still in the process of being developed, Brazil and China are working together on other ports. In addition, China is home to a variety of well-established ports, some of which include Qingdao Port, Ningbo Port, and Liaoning Port, amongst others. The perception of these ports in the rest of the globe is still another significant consideration. As a consequence of this, Western nations led by the United States are unable to pose a threat to the growth of China's commercial activity based solely on the port. When the Huangjing Port is finally completed, China and Malaysia will work together to take their position in the international market to the next level. What kinds of long-term advantages do you anticipate the investments made by China in the construction of the Huangjing Port bringing about? Thanks for watching. Click on these videos to watch about another shocking project.